A poster in Gloucester urging people not to give money to people on the streets is causing major controversy. As I say, it's been put up by the City Council, and there's a photo of a rough sleeper alongside the words, "In some cases, the people sleeping rough are not homeless. They are in accommodation receiving support and benefits." The local Labour group says it's disgusted, absolutely disgusted by this, and are asking that the City Council remove the posters. But the council have defended the posters and say the launch of their Street Aware campaign is to raise public awareness about alternative giving. They continue, it's a tough message to deliver, but we must consider whether giving money directly to the individuals is the best way to support them to make positive and sustainable change. Now, I can now talk to Richard Graham, the Conservative MP for the area for Gloucester. I'm also going to be joined by John Glackin, the founder of Street Kitchen, which provides soup kitchens and support for the homeless. And he brings an important perspective because he was once homeless himself. But first, let me start with Richard Graham. Good morning.
Good morning.
These posters have caused a stir. Are they delivering an uncomfortable truth?
Well, the key message they're trying to get across is that it is true that some of those begging are doing so in order to fuel addictions, and therefore that compassionate residents of Gloucester or visitors from elsewhere are actually better directed to give their generosity to charities who can help the needs of those begging rather than simply fueling the addictions of some of those who are begging. So that is, I think, a fact. It's true in every city in the country, and it's part of a positive campaign that the Gloucester City Council are trying to do, which is to provide more information and better alternatives to people who want to help those who are sleeping rough or homeless. And, you know, there's an awful lot that we've done on this in Gloucester, which I'm very happy to talk about.
Well, we'll come on to that in just a moment. Let me bring in the Labour councillor, Terry Pullen. He's from the Labour group lead. He is the Labour group leader for Gloucester. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning.
As we just heard there from the MP for the area, the Conservative MP, Richard Graham, it's a positive campaign putting forward better alternatives.
I'm sorry, I would disagree with that. To be quite honest, it's the inference of the posters that have been published that is quite frankly disgusting. I've had a lot of residents talking to me. These posters denigrate and demonise the plight of homeless people in Gloucester and show very little understanding of the unfortunate conditions that they find themselves in. I understand that some people want to give money to homeless people, and that's absolutely their choice. But actually implying that many homeless people are not genuine, and trying to con people out of money is quite frankly disgusting.
It's quite frankly disgusting, Richard. You say it's a positive campaign. Let me bring you back in on this.
I think, you know, there is always going to be huge sensitivity about the tone that any council takes in trying to deal with homelessness. And this is vital at the moment because, as you know, the government is doing a huge amount more on this, recognising there is a problem.
Well, it has to. The homeless figures have gone up under the Conservatives year after year after year. It was nearly eradicated under Labour.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we put in the Homeless Reduction Bill, which I was a very early strong supporter of, which does provide additional money to local authorities to help tackle this. It's also why we've provided social impact bonds, which Gloucester has bid for and successfully won an almost £1 million social impact bond, which pays on results and already helping about 18 long-term homeless individuals in the city. So there's a whole number of things we're doing, a lot of them through the George Whitfield Centre, which is really a base for helping and sustaining people with these problems. And I've been very strongly supporting all of these. But at the same time, there is a message about how you can give most effectively, which is being done across the country. And in fact, I've got in front of me examples of posters in Newcastle, London, Bournemouth and Ipswich, all of which say your kindness could kill.
Well, let me put that back to Terry there. If you as your group say you're absolutely disgusted by these posters, can you not see the logic and the intention behind them is to potentially help people who are really homeless?
Well, first of all, we do know, and Richard has highlighted this, that there is work going on in Gloucester City, a number of agencies working to provide services for homeless people. People like StreetLink, people like P3, and as was mentioned, the City Mission the local homeless organisation, which we're very, very supportive of. In fact, we battled to get that service and that centre open against some opposition from the City Council. All I would say is that the messages that are being put out on these posters are negative. They denigrate they denigrate homeless people. They demonise. Now, the City Council really do need to get posters out there that actually are positive and create some awareness of the needs of homeless people. There's nothing,
But what would you do, Terry? What would you do to tackle the problem of fake begging? And how big do you think that problem is?
That problem is not as great as it is intimated to be. I don't argue with you that there may be the odd one or two people out there who are begging. I'm not arguing that, but I'm sorry, but people who are sleeping rough on the streets of Gloucester night after night after night are not fake beggars. They are genuine homeless people who find themselves in a situation through a litany of really tragic circumstances that lead them into that situation.
Terry, thank you very much for joining us. I do realise, as you say, you were at work and it was good of you to give your time there. But let me bring this back then to Richard Graham. As the MP for the area, there are the odd one or two are fake beggars. Is it not surely bigger than that if you've paid for a poster campaign?
The overall problems that I think any city has in terms of homeless, rough sleepers, people who are begging to fuel addictions, is a mixture of people with different needs and different problems that need to be tackled both in the short term and the long term. But the crucial message, which by the way is exactly the same in Manchester, of don't fund the habit but fund the charities, is one that we want to get over very strongly, which is why this poster is promoting Streetlink. Well, I wouldn't necessarily have chosen the precise words that this poster have got, but everyone would do it slightly differently. What I am doing, with the complete support, if I can just finish, because this is important, with the complete support actually of Faith Missions, Bishop of Gloucester, the City Council, is to create a new charity which is specifically going to encourage both individuals and organisations to fund help that will both be sustaining people in those difficult situations, which is what people like the Gloucester City Mission are already doing, but also helps them in the longer term get onto pathways where gradually they will be able to start volunteering, find purpose and work, and move out of the cycle of homelessness, which can take over people's lives for many, many years.
What's your problem with the wording of this poster then?
I think probably the alternative that's there in the second half of it about giving to Streetlink is something that we could have highlighted more effectively, we, the city as a whole, in terms of, there is a better way to help homeless people. But these are relative semantics.
Okay.
The key thing is they are trying to do their best.
Yes.
And actually we've all got to help.
And let me just drill down for a moment. We heard there from the Labour councillor that it's one or two are fake begging. I mean, if I say to you now, I'm getting texts from across... Well, that's what I want to understand. I'm getting texts from across the country from people saying they've seen people get on trains after they've seen them begging. Could you put that into context?
Well, we know that, I'm afraid it's more than one or two, because you can just look at the police records and the magistrates' courts who have specifically banned various people from being in the city centre at all because they are prolific beggars.
And what scale are we? What percentage? Can you give me a rough idea?
Well, the overall figures of those who are homeless or rough sleeping in Gloucester are not huge. There are moments when you can debate the figures because they fluctuate slightly from day to day. But, we're not really talking more than 30 people at any given stage.
And what percentage do you think are fake?
Well, fake, I think fake is maybe the wrong word, but let's say begging for commercial purposes, whereas actually they are getting benefits, which include housing benefit. I think we probably are talking, a couple of handfuls, and by and large, those have been resolved in terms of police action, magistrates, courts action and so on. But, they do come back on Saturday evenings, especially when there are lots of people in the city for the nightlife.
So roughly a third of the people begging on the streets in your constituency are begging for commercial
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to quantify it precisely.
I just want to get to know.
It is more than one or two. It really is.
In your area.
So the crucial thing is to recognise, that there is that problem on the one hand, and then there are people with needs and real issues that do have to be tackled. So we have to strike the balance, and this is not about the compassionate against the uncompassionate. This is about everybody understanding both sides of the issue and finding ways through to tackle it effectively.
Very simple question before I bring John Glackin in, who's the founder of Streets Kitchen, which is, of course, all about servicing the needs of people who find themselves in this terrible situation for real and not for commercial gain in any way. Do you give money to beggars on the street?
No, I give money to charities that are helping.
So you do it directly through the organisations?
I do directly, but I don't have a problem with someone who wants to buy a cup of coffee for somebody who's sitting outside a shop on a sleeping bag begging, because who knows what their situations are. And frankly, that is a compassionate gesture, but it's not fueling drug or alcohol addiction. John
Glackin, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining me. I mean, we're trying to get a sense of the picture out in Gloucester, but first of all, if you could tell us, you were homeless. Did you find yourself having to beg?
I was fortunate that I didn't have to beg. I was actually got into the squatting scene. We got into, we knew how to skip, find food, and there is food available. I didn't have to beg, so I didn't have any mad addictions, I didn't have any mad needs that I needed money for. If I needed clothes or anything, I could find them and stuff. But I mean, that's just one person, it's just me. I mean, this is just such a ridiculous conversation that's still going on. I mean, we've been part of this discussion for years now.
Why is it a ridiculous conversation?
Well, we've got a Tory MP that's talking about two handfuls, being as vague as possible. I mean, I could just as well say that it's true that some MPs are not corrupt. I mean, it's as vague as that. I mean, why are we talking about it? We're talking about a very small problem on the streets. I mean, we're talking about beggars are the tip of the iceberg of homeless people. I mean, anybody, and I mean, research has proven this, that anybody that is forced into that position of begging for money has been homeless for quite a while. They have no benefits. I mean, we're seeing a lot of people coming up to us now that aren't maybe street homeless. They are very on the verge of being homelessness due to the fact they're not getting any benefits or any money for maybe 6 weeks on the universal credit. I mean, that's going to be a massive problem for us. Why do people beg? They need money, and that's simply it. If you want to know what they need money for, ask them. I mean, I have examples of women who we provide basics, we provide food, we provide very simple things just to keep people alive. I mean, I know women who have begged just to get sanitary products, to get simple things we take for granted. And of course.
So do you think that only money and donations should go directly to organisations like yourself, like Streets Kitchen, or do you yourself give money? Do you put your hand in your pocket and give cash to those begging?
Well, I actually can't afford to give cash. I don't have that much money. So really what I do is give my time. Right. And that's something that we would actually encourage people to give time, maybe to their local grassroots groups. I mean, that's where you'll get the understanding. I mean, I'm listening to this Tory MP, and he hasn't a clue. He's not on the streets. They're getting advised by those charities that are in place to tell them that it's a good idea, that we shouldn't give homeless people money, give it to us.
That's exactly what I am doing.
There you go.
Exactly. I actually opened the George Whitfield Centre and helped set it up in the first place. We are absolutely working hand in hand with the people on the streets working, but we're also trying to look longer term about how we can help people out of the cycle.
What do you say to that, John?
I'd actually be ashamed if I was a local MP and I was invited along to open any homeless services, or if I was invited along to open a food bank in my constituency. It's our shame that there are homeless people there. I mean, we say don't give money to homeless people as if that's an answer. That is not an answer. An answer is opening up empty buildings. An answer is getting on the ground to the grassroots groups and assisting them. Those groups that do not take funding from councils, etc. I mean, the answer is not StreetLink. StreetLink is a failed phone line. Ask anybody on the streets who tries to use that number to access our services. It does not work. They talk about no second night out. It's failed.
I mean, on that point, you've made lots of different points there, but on that particular point, Richard, the shame that you feel, potentially, when you have to go and open these sorts of services representing this area, there shouldn't be anybody sleeping out for a second night out. That was the promise, wasn't it?
Look, I don't think that shame comes into this at all. When we've got the Gloucestershire Care Services who've had a specific service for the homeless, which includes people who are rough sleeping and everything else, for about the last 20 years, this is not about shame because something has suddenly happened. There are always people getting into severe difficulties. What matters is how we try and help them out of that. And that's what these grassroots organisations that John has rightly identified, people like the Gloucester City Mission and others, doing all sorts of different things to help in Gloucester, just as they will be in other cities.
And some of the other services you outlined. Can I just bring in Martin, who's got in touch, who's listening in Northampton? Martin, hello.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm very well. What's your experience and what do you want to say on this?
Do you know what, right, I was going to continue with the argument, but I'm going to come at it from a bit of a different angle here. I am ex-heroin addict, ex-crack addict. I'm in a homeless hostel. And obviously I'm being provided with the help. Now, I was living rough on the street, but while I was living rough on the street, I was in treatment for drugs, and I was begging to get more drugs.
Yes.
Right? And when I first moved into my homeless accommodation, I've messed up my drug treatment. So I wasn't on a drug treatment, but I was in accommodation. But I was going out begging every night to fund my drug habit. And there's many, many, many people like that.
And because you know that, do you think it's wrong to give cash to beggars on the street?
You know what? You should really give time, coffee, a cigarette. You really should. And I mean, this is coming from personal experience.
Of course, which is why
I'm in my homeless hostel now.
Yeah, and we really value you getting in touch today. Thank you very much, Martin. Because I wanted to ask you, when you hear that the poster that's gone up around Gloucester...
They've done the same thing in my town.
Right, so it's going up...
Little kindness, all of that.
And what's your reaction to that as someone who's slept on the streets?
Well, as someone who slept on the street, it's correct. As the ex-junkie side of me says, oh, God, but how do I make money to score without shoplifting and getting arrested? Because by begging, I don't have to get arrested and I can keep doing drugs. I've got this sort of dichotomy in my head, obviously, because having various issues, this is why I'm seeing it from different points of view here. The best thing you can give to a homeless person is a coffee, a cigarette, and a bit of your time, because anything else, I can tell you is about, off the top of my head, at least 9 of the people I know that are in a hostel that are begging at the weekend.
Well, Martin, I appreciate you giving us your insight and your time. Thank you very much for getting in touch.
There, but that's the way it is.
Well, if I could just say, final word to you, John, there, as someone who runs Streets Kitchen, that's from a homeless person themselves. What do you make of that?
Right. I mean, people are begging to feed their addiction. Some people have those addictions because there is no services there. I mean, for example, we run a day centre. We just opened 6 months ago. In the local area, shoplifting has gone down because people have somewhere to come to. Our friend mentioned about that people didn't want a criminal conviction. I mean, if we stop giving people cash, we're going to start jailing people,
Well, that's the other... That's
the shoplifting,
the other side of it.
Ridiculous.
I'm going to have to leave it.
Bottom line, ask somebody what they need the money for. Don't talk to somebody.
That's some good advice there at the end. John Glackin, I'm going to have to leave it there, founder of Streets Kitchen, who was homeless himself at one point, and Richard Graham, thank you for your time as well, the Conservative MP for Gloucester. You also heard from Terry Pullen, who's a Labour councillor in the area where these posters have gone up.